Cycle Rogue is a deck that has been continuing to dominate the high legend ladder going into January as well. The idea of Cycle Rogue is to use your cycling cards along with Ethereal Oracle to draw through your deck as quick as possible to activate to activate your giant, and then to use breakdance on your giants to be able to set up a board of 8/8s. The idea behind that is then you're able to use the following turn because if your opponent isn't able to clear the giants, generally you'll just win that there on that turn, the following turn, because your opponent won't be able to deal with it. Or the following turn, you can then activate your asteroids and start getting those throughout your deck because you've cleaned through a lot of your decks. And then you can use Shadow Step on your Mauler as well. You'll see in the following footage that I do also use Incindius as well. That's another way that you can use the deck for your AoE. It's important that you consider how many of your maulers you have as well, because that's a way to get the final last bit of burst damage down onto opponents. Especially since it is useful for drawing cards, because each time it's asteroids summoned, you draw an extra card. So you draw one card for the asteroid, and then you draw the next card. So it does help get your giants online earlier, but it can also mean that in the later game, you're not able to take out your opponent with an appropriate amount of damage that's needed. So in going into this gameplay footage, I'm playing against a handbuff paladin. I'm using Cycle Rogue, and I've at the moment drawn through, by the looks of it, 8 cards. So with those draws, and since I don't have my Oracle at the moment, it does make it a bit trickier. And them having the turn 3 weapon does also make it even trickier as well. So the idea behind beating Paladin or handbuff Paladin is you need to make sure that you're clearing their board as much as you can, because if they use their buffs onto any minions that are already on the board, then they'll have a lot of burst damage that can come quite easily from their hand. The other thing to think about is limiting the amount of damage you're also taking, simply because they might have charge. So usually when I'm playing against a handbuff paladin, the first things that I'll clear, if I can't clear everything, is I'll clear the mechs, and then, or anything that's obviously posing a massive threat. But mechs in particular, because with mechs they can use magnetic. So once they buff up their cards, they can use magnetic to get even additional burst further. So you'll notice in this footage here, I only have the Oracle on the board. I have a Tarslick, and I'm going to go for the mech, because the idea behind it is that I can still take out the rest of their board, possibly if I get the prep and the fan, but I need to take out the mechs, so then they can't do a magnetic play onto it in future turns to be able to deal even more damage that's there. So they still do have 6 damage on the board, and my hand is quite weak since I don't have any of my cheap spells. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reduce down as much damage as possible to be tanking, and that they're able to deal. And luckily, looking at their hand, although they did have quite a strong start, a strong start having both of their weapons and already using all the procs, they don't have too many cards in their hand. So it means that there's not too much that I need to worry about in future turns if I'm able to establish the board. You do also notice that I only have 8 health, so pretty much it's essential that I don't have any minions left on the board for them to deal with. I do use the gear shift here, although it does cycle one of my breakdances, because I want to be able to get all the cards out of my hand and be able to use those giants for free. The Stomper isn't very useful in this matchup. In quite a few other matchups it is useful, but in this matchup in particular it's not useful at all, because there's not many spells that handbuff Paladin plays. So I'm right now sitting with my giants on the board, and they don't really have anything to majorly worry me with, which I'm quite glad about. I have squelched them just so then they don't, because sometimes people try to tilt you and then you might concede just because, they put a well played down, and then just, yeah, you don't want to tilt because of that. So I squelched them in this turn here because it's quite likely or quite possible they could have a charge minion plus the 2 damage that's going from the painters. But yeah, so I squelched them to make sure that I don't fall into any sort of trap that's there. But going into the future turn, I do end up making a misplay in this. I could have won this turn because I have the Oracle here. I have 26 damage on board, but you'll see in the gameplay footage shortly that I do end up making a mistake that could have possibly cost me the game. I missed playing. I played down my Oracle, and then I don't. You'll see in a moment. So I play down the Oracle, and then I Shadow Step my Oracle without using the damage first. So at the moment, I'm still counting my deck to make sure I have the Tarslick, and I Shadow Step without attacking, and that is probably the biggest misplay that I could have made. So I end up noticing in a moment. Obviously, drawing my Tarslick meant that that's the case, and then I end up having to change my game plan. So it is important, even if you do make mistakes, not to tilt, and you think of an alternative game plan that can occur. Obviously, since I've already used Tarslick, I can use a Tarslick onto that minion, and then I can use Prep and Fan of Knives. Since I have two spell damage minions on the board, it's going to deal 3 plus 3, and then the next one's doubled, which is 6. So it ends up taking out both of those Ziliacs, but it obviously gives my opponent an extra turn, and an extra turn playing against a deck that can have charge, especially since I only have 6 health, is not a ideal situation. Since they just play down the Giant, it's not too much of a concern for me since I have the Dubious Purchase. I do need to make sure that I'm not overdrawing, so what I do here is I look at my 1 card, I have 6 health, so I can't draw an extra card in addition to my Dubious Purchase, because if I did, I would end up, I'd end up obviously dying. So right now I'm just calculating to make sure that I can do enough damage to the opponent. They only have 5 health. I'm also thinking of if I could do an Incindius play. So I'm just weighing up my options in this point of time of how best to deal with the opponent. So yeah, obviously the best play in this situation, since I do have Dubious Purchase, is I need to make sure that I get that out, knock out the 6-3 and then go for the board. So I use the breakdance to activate my combo. I then use my Dubious Purchase since I already still have the 2 damage on the board, and then I just go straight into the opponent. And then that's the win that's there. I was hoping for that turn to get the Mauler, but yeah. As you can see from that gameplay, although I made a mistake, I still was able to capitalize and win. It's important that you don't tilt, because if you tilt, then obviously it makes things a lot worse, because yeah, I had the game in that previous turn, but I ended up making a mistake. Going into this game, I'm playing against Death Knight. Death Knight is quite a tricky matchup, especially if they have Hellier. If Hellier is played early against you, your oracles become a lot weaker. So you'll notice that I kept the gear shift. Usually for my mulligans, I don't keep gear shift because it's a relatively strong card to draw through your deck, but you quite often want to be keeping a few of those things that end up being in front anyway. So it's more important that you're just really searching hard for that for your oracle and for your your other cycle cards that are there, your quick pick and your other cards that are important. Obviously, having Prep and Dubious Purchase is quite useful for me in that situation because I was able to draw through more cards, draw through it quite quickly, and I have another Dubious Purchase in my hand too, along with my Oracle. So going into the future turn, I have a few choices that I could do here. So I could use the Oracle and then use Backstab, which I end up doing because I have a minion down. But if I didn't have that play, I more than likely would have gone for the Dubious Purchase play with the Prep. So right now I'm just deciding whether to get my Oracle back into my hand or not. I end up just leaving it on the board just because although it is a difficult thing to do, I don't really want to lose one of my breakdances, especially since Giants are quite important in this matchup against Death Knight. So they end up playing Hellier on turn 3 using their coin, so this is going to be a very tricky matchup, especially since my Oracle is now going to be a lot weaker as a result of it. I end up drawing into a Shadow Step this turn, which is great, and you'll notice that I did attack first this time for dealing damage, and then I played out my Oracle and I used my Backstab. So it's generally, as a rule, it's better to use your shadow steps on your oracle rather than breakdance. If you are desperate, you can use the breakdance, but in general, you want to be trying to hold it as long as possible. So going into that turn, you'll see that I got a little bit unlucky drawing into two of the plagues. Obviously, the plagues do build up quite a bit of damage, and since you're not playing Grifter anymore in these lists, its damage ends up sticking on you. Yeah, so they end up getting their minions down. They're able to draw some more cards using that minion that they've also just played down that's there. I end up drawing into Gear Shift, so right now I'm just deciding whether to play the Oracle then the Gear Shift, or to, what decision I'm going to play. So I end up using the Quick Pick first, just to draw the card. It was quite likely I'd draw into my Playhouse Giant since my deck is quite low, and I also have another Dig for Treasure, I believe, in that anyway. I wanted to use it first as well, just because I do want to keep the Blood Mage Thalnos and the Mauler just in case, because I am going to have to burst down this opponent more than likely, since I also don't want to, and I also don't want to be shuffling through a lot of my cards, because with the plagues in the deck, the more that you draw into, the more damage that you're getting built up, and it's a lot easier for your opponent to take you out. So they end up playing down their 3-drop. They use the Frost Strike as well, which clears one of my giants, which is annoying, but I can manage against it. Another plague comes out of my deck, which is not great, and another one. I end up drawing into my Stomper. So the Stomper in this matchup can be relatively useful because it can stop them using their Airlock Breach against you. With their Airlock Breach, it means that they can't get that extra health to deal with it, and it's a little bit more difficult for them to deal with your giants as well on the board. So you'll notice that I didn't do too much that turn because I didn't really feel that it was necessary, especially since I had the Stomper play that was there. They end up playing down their 6-drop, which reduces down their corpses that are there, but it also does end up clearing one of my minions. So I then have to readjust my game plan, since I've now only got 12 damage that's on the board here. I end up drawing to Incindius. I end up just playing it down because with Incindius and Oracle, it is still more likely, obviously, since you're shuffling in 5 options rather than the 3 plagues that are already in there. And then the future turn, I'm also going to be playing down my Maulers in addition to my Oracle. So it's significantly more likely that I'll be drawing into spells that I want rather than the plagues that I obviously don't want. So they end up playing down their 2-drop, which isn't too much of a concern for me. They use that spell there to try and obviously get more plagues used. And when you draw a card and it says, it's locked, with the cast when drawn, it means that it's not. So it means it's actually a card that is essentially free, so you're not having to worry about the other part for it. I end up playing my Mauler, and then I play my my Oracle. I'm also right now just determining what the best play is to do here. So I end up getting I end up using my Fan of Knives to clear the board first, because I want to make sure the asteroids are dealing that face damage to the opponent. I end up getting a tiny bit lucky, I think, but not that lucky, where none of the plagues, the unholy plagues, get in the way of my burst. And then I just use the Incindius to end up winning the game that's there. So it is quite difficult for plagues against a plague deck for this deck, but if you use your giants, generally you'll go a lot stronger. Going into this game, I'm playing against a rogue. Previously I'd played against this opponent in the day, and they were using Cycle Rogue as well, so I end up mulliganing for a Cycle Rogue. For Cycle Rogue, generally what I've found, at least when I've played, going first is a lot stronger than going second, because the game usually finishes on that 7th or 8th turn, and although you get the coin going second, I've found that just the simple loss of tempo is problematic for it. So it is quite a close mirror match, but I've in my play testing in my games that I've played, I've lost a lot more times going second than I've lost going first. Because, yeah, I end up using the prep and the dubious purchase here. I do have Oracle in my hand in that situation, but I didn't really want to use it just in case I couldn't get it back up. It's obviously an essential part of this matchup, and if you have a minion on the board, your opponent's able to use their backstab, or they're able to use other cards to, with their Oracle to draw more cards. So that's the reason why I use the dubious purchase rather than using the Oracle in that previous turn. Going into turn 4, I end up drawing into my Oracle, and I just use a second dubious purchase. I know that it seems a bit strange to be doing that, but it also lulls my opponent somewhat into a false sense of security that I haven't drawn into my Oracle. So it means that they possibly may play a bit more aggressively, or they may not play an appropriate sort of stance to it, as in they may end up just leaving their Oracle down on the board, or something along those lines. They end up using their Blood Mage Thalnos and backstabbing it. Not a great thing, really, because it does then reduce down their damage output for future turns. I use my Dig for Treasure before I use my Oracle, just because I want to see what I end up drawing into first. I end up using my Prep in addition to it, and then I obviously draw the 2 cards that are here. I get into my Asteroid, which is very useful, and I get a second Shadow Step. So I end up using the Fan of Knives here. I get my extra Asteroid, and then I get another Dig for Treasure. So right now I'm just determining what the best way to deal with this opponent is. I do have two procs left on my giant, and I'm just thinking of how best to draw my cards and use my cards. So I do end up backstabbing my Oracle, since I ended up getting that next Dig for Treasure. My other Oracle with my Dig for Treasure, and it means that the board's clear, and I'm also drawing an extra card that's here. So going into their turn with turn 5, they do have a giant that's getting played down in a moment. I'll have a giant going down next turn, guaranteed, so I'm going to be able to get my three giants down onto the board. And I, in general, just want to chill relatively for the future turn. If I draw into my Stomper, obviously it's quite useful, because it means that they won't be able to draw through many cards, or they won't be able to deal with my board very effectively. So they end up using their cycle. They play down the Mauler to be able to get some Asteroids into their deck. Since you don't generally in this matchup also have many minions that are played down, it obviously is useful for your opponent to it's useful to make sure that you're playing. It's useful to be playing down your Mauler earlier, just because you are able to get those minions down easy, and you're also able to play and get those Asteroids going face rather than onto minions, because quite often against a rogue you're not playing much of a board. You're usually shadow stepping your Oracle, you're just clearing the board using your cheap spells and then getting your Oracle back into your hand, and then the turn that you play these giants, obviously the Asteroids wouldn't be hitting, if they hit them, you're in general wanting to clear them anyway, but you're dealing that damage to your opponent's face using those Asteroids, rather than it's going into random minions that you don't really want it to be going into. So they end up having their Oracle here, and quite common is that this turn the opponent is able to clear the board, so they can use their Tarslick, they can use their Fan of Knives, they can use all that sort of stuff to deal with whatever minions that are here. And that's what I found in my testing, where if they aren't able to clear this board, obviously you just win, because they've taken a lot of damage through all the pressure that's here, and then you can just use either Incindius or Asteroids or things like that. Or in other turns, you could possibly have the issue then that you're one turn behind with the Incindius, because the Incindius then can get played down, then go into your opponent that's there. So going into this turn here, I do have my I have 2 Tarslicks and I have a Fan of Knives, so I'm able to clear the whole Giants board that they have played down here. and I can obviously keep my frozen one, so that is quite strong. I do have Incindius here that I've just drawn into, which is very useful as well. So right now I'm just determining whether to play Incindius first or go for the Oracle and my fan with the Tarslicks and my Fan of Knives. I do play the Oracle because it is a bit risky to be not using the Oracle and to be playing down Incindius on that turn. I just use one Tarslick into their Giant and then I use a Fan of Knives, so it clears their board, but it also means that I am in a situation that, you know, I've got the board presence. I've also got my extra Oracle. I've got an extra Thalnos, and I'm going to have Incindius down on the following turn as well. So since I have my single minion on the board, they do need to deal with it because they can't just leave an 8 damage minion on their board. Otherwise, you can quite easily deal that 12 damage that comes down. So they use their Dubious Purchase. They've used Dig for Treasure and they've used the Dubious Purchase. I'm hoping here for the Asteroid not to go face. It ends up hitting my minion, luckily. They end up only having the one card that's here and then they play their Ceaseless Expanse. So it's important in this situation because they are going to... they obviously have their Ceaseless Expanse here that if I clear it, they won't really have any way to deal with it, especially if I can get an Incindius down alongside it. So my following turn, since I only have so few cards, is I'm hoping to be able to go Gear Shift, draw into Ceaseless Expanse, play Ceaseless Expanse down, and then play Incindius down next to it. And then that would more than likely be enough for the game, just because they don't really have too much more damage that's there. They play down their last Giants. They do have a little bit of a board here. I draw into my Ceaseless Expanse, which is, obviously great for me. I'm going to play down my Incindius. It's important for your Incindius turn as well that you're not using it too abruptly. Like you don't want to use your Incindius and then draw through more cards. You need to make sure you use your Incindius and at the end of your card drawing time, unless you have lethal coming from it or it's stopping you from being taken out, because it deals so much more damage by having the procs on it. Yeah. So going into this game that's here, you'll notice that I full kept everything. Oracle is obviously the best card for this deck to be making sure that you're cycling really quickly and easily. Shadow Step is essential for Oracle, and then obviously the prep can be used in addition to your Oracle to draw through more cards, so you can play it down on turn 3 and get through more of your spells that you've got. So yeah, it's a fantastic draw to be having for this one. So I end up just playing my dagger and hitting into the opponent's face. There's not really any other play that I'd really go for. You could use Fan of Knives in that situation and draw through an extra card. Like, that wouldn't have been terrible. But yeah, I ended up just doing the dagger play. I played on my Oracle. I use prep. I'm going to use Fan of Knives in a moment to clear their 2/2. Just making sure I'm drawing through my cards first. I use the Fan of Knives to clear the 2/2, and then I Shadow Step my Oracle. So, going into future turn, I could use Dubious Purchase. I obviously have my Oracle, and I decide not to swing with my weapon just in case I need to use it for a little bit of extra damage into one of the opponent's minions. Their turn, they use Dubious Purchase, so it does signal that they don't have their Oracle in their hand, which means that I can, take an extra turn just to draw through cards. I've used my Dubious Purchase exactly the way they use theirs as well, so it ends up being net neutral for both of us. They play down their second Mauler, which is a little bit scary because it means that their Giants could be coming on a lot sooner, and they also play down their Blood Mage Thalnos. So it's important this turn that I do take out the Blood Mage Thalnos just in case the Asteroids end up coming out of the deck, because I obviously don't want the Asteroids to be dealing more damage than what they need to. I end up using my Backstab, and I'm just deciding which one to use it on. And the only thing that I'm deciding is am I going to use my weapon or not use my weapon? That's the reason why I was deciding whether to use it on the 2/2 or the Blood Mage Thalnos. So I end up using my Gear Shift. I use the one on the left, just so then I can possibly use the second Gear Shift if I need to. And then it means that I'll be getting close enough to my Giants, so I'll be able to start a Giant's turn if I need to. I do play down my Quick Pick here as well, and I use the second Gear Shift. It means that I will have access to my Giant in this turn, And I believe that I also, so I hit with the quick pick, I play down my giant, I prep, and then I use breakdance on the giant to get it out and get it active. So having turn 5 giant is very strong with this deck, just simply because usually it's turn 6 that it's turn 5, turn 6 that you will get it. So if your opponent hasn't had an oracle out for the entire game, it's quite likely that you will be relatively safe here to play this play down, because they'll either need to use all their mana to clear it, or they won't be able to clear it in general. So they end up using their 2 Tasklicks here, which means that I'm not actually sure why they did it in that particular order. It didn't really make sense to me. Like, you play the Oracle first, then use the Tasklicks so you can clear the board a lot easier. I'm not 100% sure why they did it that way. But either way, they ended up playing it down. They got... Actually, I think they may have Fan of Knives into that Oracle, maybe? I'm not really sure. It was very strange to me, that play. Right now I'm just deciding what I want to do. I'm thinking of using Incindius. Like, I could use the Stomper as well, to mean that I stall them an extra turn. But since I'm the one that's posing the bigger threat, it's important that I keep my hand on, keep my plays going forward and playing aggressively towards the opponent. I play down the Incindius here. It's possible they may not have a clear to it as well, since they just use their Tasklicks. So since they've used those Tasklicks, they end up having the Dubious Purchase, which is a little bit unfortunate, obviously, to clearing the Incindius, but it means that they're using a lot of their mana as well in that turn to deal with it. They end up using both the cults that they have, which does reduce down the likelihood of me being able to clear this board. So I'm just looking at my hand at the best way to clear it. I don't believe that there is a full clear in this hand, because I'm at 7 mana and they've used 2 of those cultists. So I just decide what the best play is to clear as much as I can, and I'm just deciding whether also to just play down my asteroids if I need to. I end up playing down my asteroids, and then I Fan of Knives. It is possible, so I'm going to deal with both the 3/2s, but it is possible that the asteroids may end up proccing into something, and I also do have those eruptions in my deck as well to deal the 3 damage. So it is, with that being played, it's quite likely that I do end up being able to clear their board that's there. Obviously, it is a little bit of a tiny risk, but there wasn't really any direct clear that I'd be able to do onto that, since they did play down the 2 and they were increasing the mana of all my spells by 2. So they end up drawing. They play down their quick pick. It does get them another card, obviously, but since they haven't got Incindius down yet, and I've got my Oracle down in my hand as well, and I've got an Asteroid in the deck. I do have a very strong board here as well, just simply because they will have to trade into it. And the Incindius Eruption means that I'm able to clear pretty much anything that they do pose as well. I do obviously have the Ceaseless Expanse in my hand as well. That's now at 0 mana, so I can clear the whole board as well if I'm using any of my asteroids. I end up drawing into an asteroid here, and it goes into one of the minions. A little bit unfortunate there. Obviously, the preference is that it goes face, because I'm planning on using the Ceaseless Expanse in this situation. So I'm just counting here right now the amount of cards and how much damage I need to deal. I play down the Ceaseless Expanse to clear the board. I use the Dig for Treasure first to draw into my Bloodmage Thalnos. And now I'm just deciding how the best way to draw my cards is. So I play down my Mauler, and I want to make sure that I'm able to deal lethal damage to this opponent. So since I still have, I believe, 1 Eruption left in my deck, and then I have the 2 Asteroids, it ends up essentially being guaranteed for what I need to. Obviously, and I do appreciate the support. If you are enjoying the content, please subscribe. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, we're in the moment of working towards building up the channel. I end up using the Tasklick here with my Oracle. It does deal 2 damage, which means that it gets it down to, I just need 3 spells to be able to deal with the opponent. If I didn't have that play, I still could have used the Speaker Stomper to be able to cycle through the deck a little bit more, and obviously that ends up winning the game for me. Going into this game, I'm playing against Priest. So with Priest, it is generally going to be the Dragon Priest, where they end up being able to take the extra turn. You want to make sure you're establishing tempo for it. If you're playing against the Reno Priest, obviously you have a lot of turns to be able to do as much as you want, but you want to make sure in that situation that you're getting your Giants ready, getting your Incindius ready to be able to deal with the onslaught that does occur in the future turns. I end up getting quite a decent start by having my Oracle, my Dubious Purchase, and my Prep. Those are very useful in a situation because you're able to draw through a lot more cards. You can clear their one minion or that they generally play down. In this turn here, I end up just holding the coin. I could have gone coin, prep, dubious purchase. I didn't do that because the Oracle doesn't have a particular play at the moment, so I wanted to be a little bit safer just in case I didn't draw into any cheap spell. So going into this turn here, I use my prep. I'm just actually deciding whether to use the Mauler, but the prep dubious purchase is obviously the better play. It clears that minion because I don't really want to be getting them into too bad a situation for it, and it also means that they aren't able to get extra health to be able to build a bigger board using it. They end up using just Scale Replica, so it's not a very strong turn for them since they are drawing 2 extra cards using that, but it means that they're not establishing any more tempo towards me, which is obviously beneficial for me because I don't really want to be dealing with too much aggression from the opponent. I end up playing my Oracle here. I could have gone for the Dubious Purchase play, but I end up using the Oracle just because I do have Shadow Step in my hand now. I end up drawing also into Tarslick, and I do have the Shadow Step obviously as well. So I'm just deciding here whether to keep it or not. I end up keeping it just because in the future turn I will have the AoE clear on the opponent. I should have, looking back as a little macro play, I should have gone the Oracle, and I should have Shadow Stepped the Oracle after using the Dig for Treasure, just because when you use it, you want to draw through all the cards that you need before you decide to use an extra card that's there. Then playing that Grifter, obviously mulliganing or burning one of my cards is a little bit frustrating, but the draw 3, although not very useful right now, it is very strong going into your end turns because you're able to use it in addition to your spells, which obviously is quite useful to be doing. I end up using my Oracle here. I used the Oracle to draw through more cards and cycle through more cards. I need to make sure that I'm trying to get my Giants on probably next turn, if not the turn after, obviously. So that draw 3 card, as they use bird watching, is you can use it, and when you use it, when it cycles through and grabs things like your eruptions and your asteroids, it ends up playing those cards down, and then you draw an extra card and you don't actually end up discarding it, which I believe I end up doing in this gameplay footage as well. So they end up playing down their minions. They've got 2, 3, 4s and their 1, 2. It is a little bit concerning the fact that they do have those minions that can then come back out of their deck and they can be a little bit stronger. I end up getting my Tarslick here, and I do have Fan of Knives, so it means that I'm able to clear this whole board. I end up using the Tarslick going into face, and then I'm just deciding whether here to use the prep or not to use the prep. I end up using it just because it means that I could have the possibility of getting my Giant online. I do have the choice here to use the spell, the draw 3 spell, but I end up deciding against it. And then because I don't have enough of I don't have any asteroids in the deck, and I don't really want to burn through all those cards that are there. And I'm just right now deciding whether to Shadow Step my Oracle, which I end up doing because it is a very valuable card. So going into their turn that they're on turn 6, so they still are a few turns away from getting their dragons online, getting their time winder online, so getting that extra turn. So I am in a situation that I'm relatively safe. They also do use their draw 3 card as well, it's obviously a very strong card to be using, and I find that it's one of the stronger ones to use just because it ends up leaving your opponent with a card that in general you don't really want to be using. In this turn here, I'm just deciding whether to use Incindius or to use my Oracle and build up more tempo, because with Incindius I can use that draw 3 card as well, and since they don't really have a possibility of using and I'm also have the Playhouse Giant in my hand too, since they don't have a way of building up the total amount of dragons to be able to use the Time Winder, I end up just opting to use the Incindius because I can then also use that draw 3 card as well if I need to be able to clear their board. So I end up shuffling the eruptions in my deck. I get an extra 2. Playing down the Incindius as well in this board position it's possible that you may be able to keep your Incindius alive for an extra turn to be able to deal even more AoE to the opponent with the eruptions. Obviously with the Mantle that won't be happening because I'll end up removing it from play, but it means that they've essentially used an entire turn to just clear the board that's here. And with my cheaper amounts of spells and my minions and things like that in my deck, it means that I'm sitting in a situation that's relatively positive for that. So they end up using their weapon swing, and then they will obviously draw into that amalgam that they have. It does have the 3/4 buffs that were from before, but it's not too much of an issue for me because I will be able to use AoE and things like that for the future turns. I end up drawing to my breakdance here. Obviously, it would have been useful in previous turns, but it is what it is for it. And I'm just deciding here how best to play down these cards for me. I end up playing both my Maulers and my Oracle, and then I end up using the draw 3. So watch as this occurs. I end up doing my draw 3. It uses an asteroid, so one goes face. The quick pick goes into my hand because the asteroid probably was going to get discarded. The eruption draws into that asteroid. Then the asteroid goes face. Ethereal Oracle is from that card, and then Dig for Treasure comes into my hand as well. So as you can see, I used that draw 3 card, and it didn't actually proc. I didn't discard any, I just drew 3. So it is, when you have that draw 3 card, you can use it, especially with these cast 1 drawn cards, because you don't actually end up discarding them. And that obviously ends up clearing the game. If you've enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, and have a good day.